can't arrest anyone. And the law was you could do that for anyone that had association with the house wherever they were. U.S. v. Bailey says you can't do that. She was 2 miles from the house. In the case, they have like a map of Washington, D.C. where it took place, and he was like 0.8 miles from his house, Bailey. So we could have went on. Yeah.
So you're telling me, because they do this all the time. I've got 4 or 5 friends that they have pulled over while executing warrants on their homes and businesses. So this is common practice. Let's get that out of the way. And what you're giving me is a legal background to that common practice and saying that it's not allowed or repeat that, because I'm interested. Tell me, say that again.
Because what we're talking about is like when they would be executing a search warrant at this particular location, and that's the target of the investigation.
When they're raiding you.
And they know that because of Secretary of State or other not even vetted databases, other associated people that they know are associated with the property, they will track and follow them and detain them or arrest them wherever they are. Okay? Even though they're not...
She's a terrorist.
Right.
You know, like a real threat to public safety.
Yeah,
correct.
Threatening.
But the point is, it's not allowed because the only way that they allow the police officers to not let people leave the house or can detain them while they're in the house is because of safety reasons. They're legally authorized to be there, the assumption is, and they should be able to conduct a search without interference or danger. So the extension of what they can do in terms of, taking a citizen that said, like if you're in a house, if they execute a search warrant, you don't even know what's going on there, they can hold you there. That's the extension of it. But yeah, they do it all the time.
And they do. And what that looks like is they'll often do it by force. These guys have black masks on and they've got flak jackets. You can't really hurt them. Even if you shot at them, you couldn't really hurt them. They're so protected. Okay. And their lives are so threatened and they're in such danger that they can hurt you pretty badly if you don't have criminal intent. If you're just like a woman in her car with her kid on the way to freaking work, right? All this stuff, like all this madness that you're telling us, which I have a hard time believing that you have to do this day in and day out. It happens a lot. People are still getting detained. All this legal jargon. I want folks to know what that really looks like. It's essential because we have to stop it. It's got to stop. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I can't stop either, apparently.
So the really...
You get pulled over.
Yeah,
you're with your kid in the car going to work.
Right.
They take her into custody.
Yep.
And they raided her house, and they tore it up.
Tore it up, just busted, obviously busted in the door, broke the window, of course, took everything out of the closets and the, cabinets and everything. They took everything that we had.
They broke stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled things out, dumped out stuff.
Did they dump out all your cereal?
They did not dump my cereal, but they did dump my soda on my things.
They
along
poured
with
it out
the
on
ashes on my clothing.
Okay.
From the ashtray.
Did they put cigars out in your bed?
They did not do that.
Did they leave feces in the toilet?
They didn't, so I know there's horror stories out there.
It's just what they do sometimes. All of them.
They pee in your oven?
No.
They didn't, but Dewey, I remember you telling me about that. Somebody got that.
What they did do, though, is they went hard on the forfeiture. And I believe this house was owned or being purchased, and they put a lien on it.
Yes.
And despite the fact that later on, all the alleged culpability and criminal activity arising out of this particular house was dismissed. I wasn't her lawyer at the time, but she was advised to settle and give the house or sell the house with a lien on it, right?
Yeah, I had to sell the house, and of course my.
Well, you gave them. I think you gave them money, and then they took the house.
She was at the title company when we
that.
closed.
Yep, Attorney General was at the closing.
She got her money. That's for sure.
Attorney General was at the closing.
She was at the closing at the title company. Yeah. What is this?
She's the
tax collector.
She's the
tax collector. It's a real war with real guns and soldiers and funding and real enemies, and that's you.
Vulture.
And real funding, and it comes from it's not
low-hanging fruit.
It's a real fucking war, people. You're the enemy.
Yeah.
They're going to laugh about this later. Like, remember we had that war going on? One of the scams we had is I'd show up at the closing when they'd buy a house and they'd get him to write me a check. Can you believe that? From her property.
Yeah.
She hadn't even been convicted of anything.
Nope.
So why is the Attorney General prosecuting this case? So you get raided in 2 separate counties. They use conspiracy, right? And that's right to tie in the 2 separate locations. Is that what they did?
Well, no. They charged 2 different locations to create probably more work. Could have all been charged in one location. They didn't do. They charged 2 different locations, became 2 different cases. And once the case in at her house in Washington Circuit Court was thrown out because of a Fourth Amendment violation, it then had nothing to do with the charges that existed in the case out of Wayne
That's
County in
interesting.
Plymouth. Yeah, so that was done, and it was left
Okay.
alone. And then we were left to just fight the. Unfortunately, before we got involved, as I said, she'd already disposed. The forfeiture had already been settled. So it was, that was the damage. They'd already gotten their chunk of money from the very beginning. But
So this they got what they in my I'm not a lawyer. In my experience, the Attorney General gets involved where there's a lot of money, a lot of property, a lot of cars, a lot of cash. They like those cases.
Well, that's why they
or
let the
political gain. It seems.
Investigation go on for 9 months and got 500 hours, of surveillance tapes and things like that. I mean, we were in the strip mall. I mean, come
and
on.
they got your house.
And they had come
What
in
else
and
did
done
they take?
inspections on the business.
yeah, she had
The
a license.
cops
Had
that you had a
inspections.
relationship with.
Yeah.
That you called. They used your videotape because there was something
Yeah.
they needed to see.
Yeah.
You had a relationship with the police like other businesses do in that strip mall,
we
right?
were normal.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I should
helping
mention,
patients.
and we
Okay.
we presented this as our entrapment by estoppel.
Everyone carded.
Yeah.
She'd been given a approval from the city clerk.
Like
There
the
was a-
Shaddocks
there
in
was- there
St.
was-
Clair County.
There was another existing facility that was like that. She went through the same protocol and procedure. They gave her before they approved her certificate of occupancy, they sent out fire chief and the police officers to.
And they were out several times too because there was a very old alarm in the back that they were doing extra inspection on.
Who else can they do this
the
to?
The fire inspector came at least 3 occasions.
What
te-
other businesses
She testified
can the
to
government
all of this.
do this to?
Well, she testified on this. I don't know how we don't get any traction in the court with this. You know what I mean?
My God.
How could this? Anyways, so
So
that
they
was
take all the stuff.
Took
They
it.
take the forfeiture and they charge you with what?
where in the Washtenaw there was plants. There was her and her better half at the time and her son were all caregivers, so they jacked up some plant count number.
Which is very common every time.
Correct.
They lie.
And the talk
Lie about plant count.
The talk about it afterwards is always, combined and doesn't contemplate, the
Dead
health or
plants.
size or clones or rooted
a
or
lot of
seedlings,
clones.
and all those particular.
Because she doesn't have criminal intent. And they do. They
Yes.
plan to lie on people.
Yes.
You've got your. I guess next
They
week
really
we'll do
do.
the cops lie and it's okay, and lawyers lie and it's okay, and it makes Michael yell show. That'll be 373.
Okay.
Okay, want to do that? It won't be hard. Nobody
No,
will have to
I
do
know.
any work beforehand.
I
We'll just
know.
come in and I'll ask you some questions.
I know.
Because they lie all the time, don't they, Michael?
It's a broken system. It's really a broken
They
system.
always have the old fallback is, I don't remember.
I don't remember Dewey saying, and Dewey knows because he travels with Michael all the time.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It's one of those things where there's a pattern that is developed in terms of the way in which it's
I don't
done.
remember.
I'm talking about the drug task force generally. They're pro witnesses. There's questions that are asked. They've got the answers and they know how to bail on it. But they know nothing about.
Because they're the best trained.
That's true. But they know nothing about marijuana. Really, they know how to take plants down. They don't know how to grow them. They don't know anything about ingestion, and everything they know about it is literally like reefer madness. Like it's amazing, and this has really been.
And it's consistent.
It's consistent. And if I had to
They're good
offer,
soldiers in the war.
if I had to offer an olive branch, it would be that they're blind.
See, this is what I was saying. What did I say when we started this about you're an angel?
I'm just
and
saying.
Look how wonderful you are. I want to kill them all. I want to make them cry in their cars after court. All of them. Look what they do to these people. Look what they do to these families. Look what they do to you. You know. But you want to extend an olive. I'm so sorry. You want to extend an olive branch?
Listen.
We're
I'm
going
just
to
saying
extend
this.
an
I'm saying
olive branch.
there's a lot of listen. I'm saying this. That there's a lot of police officers don't necessarily believe in it. There's very few of them that are able to look away. Like it's against their policies to look away. But I also think that a lot of them have, there's.
You don't think they like it?
Well, I would say.
You don't think they like what they're doing to people?
Some do, and I think there's a sickness if you enjoy going to someone's house and looking through their underwear drawer. There's a sickness there, and if you can enjoy that, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with the culture a society that would allow that to happen.
It's heartbreaking because they're law enforcers. I'm from a law enforcement family. Like cops didn't used to be like this at all.
Oh.
And it wasn't until I met Jeff Frazier that he put words to the things you and I had been weeping about on the phone early in the morning for years. He started using the term like civil rights violations, state and federal civil rights violations in the form of excessive force, sexual harassment, child endangerment. Like there's the words that brought life to my heart again, I swear. And it's consistent. It's consistent in what you do every time you talk to those guys on the stand. Because you know what they do to people in their homes? And then do you know what they say about those people on the stand? How can they do that, Michael?
They're pigs. That's what they do.
I mean, listen.
How?
There's a book I remember reading in college.
It's not a mistake.
Called The Banality of Evil.
It's not a mistake. They're not mistaken. They were there. It's called what?
There's a banality of evil, like it's banal.
Banality
like when
of
evil's going on,
evil.
it's like you, like whatever you're doing while it's all taking place. It's like
Banality of evil. Hey, you used a word earlier, culpability. Will you define that for me, please? Culpability.
it's responsible. The alleged, there's culpable, like responsible, potentially guilty.
And you know what? I'm going to say something now. I'm going to say that we were sort of talking earlier, and you said in a very wonderful way to someone in the message, golden rule. Remember golden
kidding.
rule?
I was kidding.
No. It's a true thing. It's a real thing because what happens with a confidential informant? What do we tell our children? How do we try to treat each other? Treat each other the way you want to be treated. Let's really love each other. Let's freaking do it. And with the confidential informant is the antithesis, the opposite of what we want in society and what we try to have in our families. I just feel like if we appeal to everyone and if people go into the courtroom and see what's happening every day to good people with no criminal intent, and based on this alone, like Jeff probably knows a Bible verse we can use.
Well,
yes.
Listen, this is not uncommon. We are a culture that is, we're a society that
Let's
is.
do it, Jeff. What's the Bible verse?
At war from the Bible till now. We're at war. This happens to be one of the wars. When the war goes on, whether it's justified or not, people act crazy. When the war is based on a lie, they're even crazier. So what I'm suggesting is, you train your soldiers and you program them a certain way for so long, and they buy into it, and they'll kill over it, and they'll act weird about it. It's all for the purpose of this thing, and then all of a sudden it changes, and all these people become transparent, and there's not
because
one.
you get in the courtroom and you don't.
Well,
she was talking about this earlier. What did you say earlier, Amanda, about what Michael does in the courtroom? You were amazed by the sheer number of
the amount of homework
assaults.
he gives them because after
that Michael does. Now he's looking at me like that. I don't care. We're going to say it anyways.
There's such a
Don't
low
look at him.
barrier
Just
for
say it.
them and such a high barrier
it's
for
true.
the defendant.
but you have to Michael it's literally like an education thing for these people because they don't know, and that came out during the trial as to how much training you get to in relation to marijuana crimes or identification of controlled substances and so on.
And we did a Dauber thing, just to say, like, the method by which
everything.
they
The Dauber thing.
the number.
Wasn't that one of the scientists from the Michigan State Police?
of
The-
your
the-
day is spent on identification of,
Marijuana.
cannabis.
Hey, Michael,
Right.
didn't you once have a judge
And there's some
actually
people that-
thank you
crazy.
for
Your life.
bringing
I
this
wouldn't
case
be
in front of him?
surprised.
Yeah, it was your case.
Uh,
It's what Hattie.
I would not be
But,
surprised.
you know,